The mining drill hit something hard deep beneath the surface of Kepler 442c's third moon. The impact sent vibrations through the entire research station, causing equipment to rattle and screens to flicker. Commander Thexavar of the Velthari Empire straightened his tall, blue-skinned frame and clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. "Finally," he said in his clicking voice, "after 3 months of digging through worthless rock, we have found something interesting." Dr. Hyunwoo Park looked up from his workstation, pushing his glasses up his nose. The human xenoarchaeologist had been studying soil samples all morning, and the sudden drilling stop made him nervous. Something about this moon felt wrong. The energy readings had been strange since they arrived, and the local wildlife avoided this area completely. "Commander, perhaps we should scan the object first before we continue," Hyunwoo said in careful, galactic standard. His Korean accent made some of the alien crew members turn their heads. Even after 50 years of humans joining galactic society, many species still found human speech patterns odd. Thexvar's large black eyes focused on the human with obvious annoyance. "Dr. Park, your species has been part of the Confederation for barely a generation. Leave the important decisions to those with experience." Around the command center, other alien crew members made soft clicking and buzzing sounds that Hyunwoo recognized as laughter. The Velthari had been exploring space for thousands of years. The insectoid Kreltak had built cities on 100 worlds. Even the plant-like Silvarin had mastered faster-than-light travel before humans discovered fire. To them, humanity was still learning to walk among the stars. Hyunwoo bit back his response and returned to his data. The energy readings were getting stronger. Whatever they had found down there was big, and it was definitely artificial. The metal composition showed elements that didn't match any known civilization in their databases. That should have been exciting news, but something in his gut told him to be careful. Ji-Eun Kim worked quietly at the engineering station in the corner of the room. As a human engineer, she was often ignored during the important discussions, which suited her fine. It meant she could focus on her work without alien politics getting in the way. Right now, she was studying the drill's impact data, and what she saw made her frown. The object they had hit wasn't just hard, it was perfectly smooth and curved, like they had struck the edge of a massive ring. The drill had barely scratched it, despite being designed to cut through the hardest known metals. Whatever this thing was made of, it was tougher than anything in their material science books. "Commander!" called out Science Officer Zextal, a tall Kreltak with green skin and 4 arms. "The deep scanners are showing a large structure. It appears to be circular, approximately 2 kilometers in diameter." The command center fell silent. Even for an advanced galactic civilization, finding ancient structures was rare. Most planets had been surveyed centuries ago. Finding something this old and this big was the discovery of a lifetime. "Bring up the imaging," Thexvar ordered. The main screen filled with a 3-dimensional map showing what lay beneath the surface. The structure was indeed circular, but it was much more complex than a simple ring. Intricate patterns covered its surface, and there were gaps that suggested it might be hollow in the center. Most impressive of all, it was clearly artificial and incredibly ancient. "Mineral dating suggests this structure is at least 3 million years old," Zextal reported. "That predates any known civilization in this sector by a significant margin." Murmurs of excitement filled the room. The political implications were enormous. Whoever claimed this discovery would gain massive prestige in the Confederation. Ancient technology could advance any species by centuries, possibly millennia. Hyunwoo studied the structure on his screen and felt a chill run down his spine. The patterns weren't random decorations. They looked like symbols, like writing, and some of those symbols looked familiar in a way that made him uncomfortable. "Permission to access the human historical databases," he said loudly enough to get the commander's attention. Thexvar turned his head, mandibles clicking in irritation. "What could human records possibly tell us about a 3-million-year-old alien structure?" "Some of these symbols," Hyunwoo said, highlighting sections on his screen. "They remind me of very old human mythological texts, symbols that appear in warning stories across many different human cultures." The bridge erupted in alien laughter. Several crew members made the universal gesture for dismissal with their various appendages. "Dr. Park," said Chief Science Officer Velandra, a purple-skinned Silveran whose leaves rustled with amusement. You cannot seriously suggest that primitive human mythology has any connection to advanced alien technology. Ji-eun looked up from her workstation. She had been running her own analysis of the symbols, comparing them to the engineering database. What she found made her stomach tighten with worry. Actually, she said quietly, Dr. Park might be right. About the warnings, all eyes turned to the young engineer. Ji-eun rarely spoke during these meetings, and never to contradict senior officers. The symbols aren't just decorative, she continued, her voice growing stronger. They follow mathematical patterns consistent with warning markers used by several ancient civilizations. The repetition, the placement, the way they spiral inward toward the center. It's the same pattern used to mark dangerous materials or forbidden areas. Thexvar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of growing anger. Are you suggesting that we abandon the greatest archaeological discovery in centuries because of human superstitions and pattern recognition? I'm suggesting we be careful, Ji-eun replied. These symbols aren't random. Someone spent a lot of time and effort putting them there. If this is a warning, we should understand what we're being warned about before we proceed. The commander's large black eyes stared at her for a long moment. Around the bridge, alien crew members shifted uncomfortably. Humans were known for their caution, sometimes to the point of cowardice. Most species saw it as a weakness left over from their primitive past. Engineer Kim, Thexvar said finally, your concerns are noted and dismissed. We are scientists and explorers, not frightened children hiding from shadows. He turned to address the full crew. Prepare the excavation equipment. We will uncover this structure completely within the week. Whatever secrets it holds will belong to the Galactic Confederation, and through it, to all our species. Cheers erupted throughout the command center. Career-making discoveries like this came once in a lifetime, if at all. Every alien on the team could see their future brightening with each passing moment. Only the two humans remained silent. Hyunwoo continued studying the symbols, cross-referencing them with Earth's oldest texts. Ji-eun ran stress analysis on the structure, trying to understand how something could remain intact for 3 million years. As the celebration continued around them, neither human noticed the faint energy pulse that emanated from deep beneath the surface. The ancient structure had detected the drilling, the scanning, the presence of intelligent life above. After millions of years of patient waiting, something far below began to stir. And in the deepest, most protected chamber of the structure, systems that had been dormant since before the first human looked up at the stars slowly began to wake up. The gate had been found. Soon it would be opened, and the things that had been buried for very good reasons would finally be free. The excavation took 6 days. When the last of the dirt and rock was cleared away, the entire research team stood in stunned silence at the edge of the massive pit. The structure was even more impressive than the scans had suggested. The ring stood 20 meters tall, made of a dark, crystalline material that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered every surface, spiraling from the outer edge toward the hollow center. Magnificent, breathed Commander Thexvar. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he studied the ancient gate. 3 million years old, and it looks like it was built yesterday. Dr. Hyunwoo descended into the pit on the mobile platform, carrying his scanning equipment. Up close, the gate was even more disturbing. The symbols weren't just carved into the surface. They seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. His equipment detected low-level energy emissions coming from deep within the crystalline structure. Commander, he called up through his communicator, the energy readings are increasing. Whatever this thing is, it's becoming more active. Expected result, replied Valandra, the chief science officer. Her purple leaves rustled with excitement. Ancient technology often responds to external stimuli. The excavation process may have triggered automatic systems. Ji-eun operated the heavy lifting equipment from the surface, but her eyes never left the gate. Something about its perfect preservation bothered her. After 3 million years, there should be some weathering, some damage, some sign of age. Instead, the structure looked like it had been built last week and then buried for protection. Energy levels are stable and rising in a controlled pattern, reported Zextal from his monitoring station. It appears the structure is powering up, systematically. Powering up for what? Hyunwoo muttered as he took readings from different sections of the gate. The symbols were definitely warnings. He was certain of it now. But warnings about what? For 3 days, the science team studied the gate while it slowly came to life. Energy flowed through channels in the crystalline material, creating beautiful patterns of light that spiraled toward the center. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. "Commander!" Zextal's voice was excited and urgent. "The center of the structure is beginning to change." Everyone rushed to the observation deck that overlooked the pit. The hollow center of the gate, which had been empty space, now shimmered like water. Colors swirled in the air, forming a flat surface that reflected no light. "It's a portal," whispered Science Officer Telvar, a young Kreltak who specialized in spatial mechanics. "The gate is creating a stable wormhole." Through the portal, they could see another place. Stars hung in an alien sky above what looked like the ruins of a vast city. Ancient towers stretched toward the horizon, their surfaces gleaming with the same crystalline material as the gate. "Incredible," Thexvar said. "We've discovered not just ancient technology, but a functional transportation system. This could revolutionize galactic travel." "Sir?" Hyunwoo's voice was tense. "I strongly recommend we study this more before sending anyone through. We don't know where it leads or if it's safe." "Dr. Park," the commander's mandibles clicked with annoyance. "Your caution is noted, but unnecessary. This is clearly a transportation device built by an advanced civilization. The portal is stable, the energy readings are normal, and the destination appears to be safe." Against Hyunwoo's protests, Thexvar ordered the first exploration team through the gate. The team consisted of 6 Velthari soldiers, 2 Kreltak scientists, and 1 Silvaran engineer. They carried full communication equipment and enough supplies for a 3-day expedition. The team stepped through the shimmering portal and disappeared. For a moment, there was silence. Then the communications equipment crackled to life. "Command, this is Exploration Team Alpha. We have successfully transported to the destination. The ruins appear to be safe. Beginning initial survey." For the next several hours, reports came back from the other side. The alien city was vast and ancient, clearly abandoned for millions of years. The architecture was unlike anything in their databases, but it showed signs of incredibly advanced technology. Most interesting of all, there were more gates scattered throughout the city, suggesting this was part of a larger network. "It's like they built a galactic highway system," reported the team leader. "There are dozens of these gates here, each one pointing to different star systems." Commander Thexvar was practically bouncing with excitement. "Prepare a full archaeological team. We're going to establish a permanent research base on the other side. This discovery will make the Confederation the most powerful force in the galaxy." But as the hours passed, the reports from the exploration team began to change. Their initial excitement faded into confusion, then concern. "Command, we're finding some disturbing evidence here. The city wasn't just abandoned, it was destroyed. Everything is covered in these strange crystalline growths, like some kind of infection spread through the entire civilization." Minho Choi, the human security officer assigned to the expedition, listened to these reports with growing alarm. He had served in the Confederation military for 8 years, and he recognized the signs of a civilization that had died fighting something. "The destruction patterns are wrong," he told Hyunwoo privately. "These people didn't die from invasion or natural disaster. They died from something that came from inside their own city." So young Lee, the human data analyst, had been working around the clock to process the information coming back from the other side. What she found in the ancient data fragments made her blood run cold. "Dr. Park," she said quietly, pulling him aside from the main group. "I've been translating some of the text fragments the team found. It's not a dead language, it's a warning system. The same warnings, repeated over and over in different scripts." "What kind of warnings?" Hyunwoo asked, though he was afraid he already knew. "About something called the sleepers. The fragments talk about things that were buried for a reason, about the price of opening what was meant to stay sealed. And there's something else. They mention a network of gates, and how opening even one of them would wake what should never wake." Before Hyunwoo could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the research station. On the monitors, they could see the exploration team on the other side of the gate, but something was wrong. The team members were moving strangely, like they were struggling against invisible forces. "Command!" The team leader's voice was strained and filled with panic. Something's happening here. The crystalline growths are moving, spreading faster. And there's something else. We're detecting massive life signs deep underground. Something big is down there, and it's waking up. The communication cut off abruptly. The portal remained stable, showing the alien city, but now they could see dark shapes moving between the ruined buildings. The crystal growths were indeed spreading, covering more of the ancient structures with each passing minute. "Sir," Minho said urgently to Commander Thexvar, "we need to close that gate. Now." But the commander was staring at the portal with a mixture of fear and fascination. "No," he said slowly. "We need to understand what's happening over there. Send another team." "Sir, with respect, that's exactly what we shouldn't do," Hyunwoo said. "Whatever destroyed that civilization is still there, and we've just woken it up." The argument was interrupted by a new sound coming through the portal, a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through their bones. On the other side, the crystal growths were glowing brighter, and the dark shapes were moving closer to the gate. For the first time since the discovery, Commander Thexvar looked uncertain. The portal that had promised galactic dominance now looked like a doorway to something terrible, and it was too late to close it. Something was coming through. The ground on the other side of the gate began to shake. Through the portal, they could see the ancient city trembling as something massive moved beneath it. The crystal growths that covered the ruins pulsed with an angry red light, spreading faster across the buildings like a living infection. "Get me a status report on the exploration team," Commander Thexvar ordered, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. The low humming sound coming through the portal was getting louder, and it seemed to vibrate inside their skulls. "No response from Alpha Team," reported Communications Officer Keldan. "Their life signs are still showing on sensors, but they're not answering our calls." Minho Choi checked his weapons and started toward the portal. As the expedition's security officer, it was his job to protect the team members, even if it meant going into obvious danger. "Wait," Hyunwoo grabbed his arm. "Don't go through there. Something's wrong with the team. Look at their movements." On the monitors, they could see the exploration team members walking between the ruins, but their movements were jerky and unnatural. They moved like puppets being controlled by invisible strings, stopping and starting without reason. "They're being controlled by something," So Young said, her face pale as she studied the data feeds. "The neural scans show massive interference. In their brain patterns, something is overriding their nervous systems." Ji-yoon was monitoring the gate's energy output when she noticed something alarming. "The portal is getting stronger. It's drawing power from somewhere else in the network. Commander, I think opening this gate has activated other gates across the galaxy." "Impossible," Valandra said, but her purple leaves were trembling with fear. "The network has been dead for millions of years." "Not dead," So Young corrected, pulling up more data fragments. "Sleeping. The whole network was put into hibernation mode to keep something contained. And we just woke it up." The shaking on the other side grew stronger. Ancient buildings began to collapse as something enormous pushed up from beneath the city. Through cracks in the ground, they could see a sickly green light pulsing like a giant heartbeat. "Sir, we need to evacuate," Minho said urgently. "Whatever's down there is coming up, and our people on the other side are compromised." But before anyone could move, the earth beneath the alien city split open like an egg. What emerged made everyone in the research station take a step back from the monitors. It was organic, but wrong in every way. The creature had no fixed shape, constantly shifting between different forms. Sometimes it looked like a massive tree with writhing branches. Other times it resembled a giant squid with too many tentacles. The only constant was its size. It was easily a kilometer across, and the waves of psychic energy it broadcast. "The ancient stars," whispered Zextel. "What is that thing?" The creature's presence had an immediate effect on the alien crew members. The Velthari began clicking their mandibles frantically and backing away from their stations. The Kreltak started making distressed chittering sounds, and Velandra's leaves turned brown with fear. But the humans remained calm. Minho felt a pressure in his mind, like something trying to push its way inside, but his mental barriers held firm. Hyunwoo experienced a similar sensation, but found he could ignore it by focusing on his work. "It's trying to control us," Ji-yoon said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "But it can't get into human minds the same way it affects the others." So Young was still analyzing data when she made a crucial discovery. It's not just one creature. The data fragments mention multiple entities like this. They call them the sleepers, ancient beings that consumed entire civilizations for sport. On the other side of the portal, the entity began moving toward the gate. With each step, the ground cracked and more crystal growth spread outward. The trapped exploration. Team members walked alongside it, their movements becoming more coordinated as the creature's control over them strengthened. It's using them as scouts, Minho realized. It's learning about us through their minds. Commander Thexvar stood frozen in the center of the command room, his large black eyes reflecting the creature's green glow. The psychic pressure was overwhelming his insectoid brain, leaving him unable to think clearly or give orders. "Commander!" Hyunwoo shook the Velthari officer. "You need to order an evacuation. That thing is heading for the gate." But Thexvar could only click his mandibles weakly. Around the command center, most of the alien crew members were in similar states, paralyzed by fear and psychic interference. Ji-eun made a command decision. "I'm shutting down the gate." "You can't," Velandra managed to say through her terror. "The power source is on the other side. The only way to close it is from there." Through the portal, they watched the entity approach the gate. As it got closer, its form became more defined, settling into something that resembled a massive spider made of dark energy and crystal. Its presence made the gate itself begin to change, the dark crystalline material spreading outward like a cancer. "It's corrupting the gate," So Young said, "turning it into something else." The creature stopped just short of the portal and extended one of its many appendages toward the energy barrier. When it touched the shimmering surface, the portal flared with brilliant light, and suddenly they could hear its voice in their minds. The voice was like ice and darkness, speaking in concepts rather than words. It communicated hunger, amusement, and the joy it felt at ending intelligent life. It had been sleeping for so long, dreaming of the taste of civilization, and now it was awake and eager to feed. Most disturbing of all, they could understand that this entity was just one of many. The gate network connected thousands of worlds, and on each world, similar creatures were beginning to stir. The ancient civilization that built the gates had tried to contain them, using the network as a prison, but they had failed. Now, with the network reactivating, the sleepers were free to spread across the galaxy once again. "How many gates are there?" Minho asked. So Young checked her data with shaking hands. "Over 10,000 confirmed, probably more that we haven't detected yet." The entity began to push through the portal. The energy barrier resisted for a moment, then started to stretch like rubber. Whatever containment protocols the ancient builders had installed were failing. "We need to warn the Confederation," Hyunwoo said. "Every world with a gate is in danger." But their communications were being jammed by the entity's psychic emissions. They were cut off from the outside galaxy, alone on a small research station, with something unimaginably dangerous trying to break through into their reality. "There has to be a way to stop it," Ji-eun said, working frantically at her engineering station. "The ancients contained them once. There must be fail-safes built into the system." The entity's appendage finally broke through the portal. The moment it touched their side of the gate, alarms began screaming throughout the station. Emergency. Lights flashed red, and the artificial gravity fluctuated as the creature's presence interfered with their technology. Worse, its psychic influence became stronger on their side. The alien crew members began moving toward the gate with the same jerky, controlled movements they had seen from the exploration team. "It's taking control of everyone," Minho said, raising his weapon as he watched his alien colleagues walking toward certain doom. But he hesitated. These were his friends and colleagues, people he had worked with for years. Even if they were being controlled, he couldn't bring himself to shoot them. "We need to get to the manual controls," Hyunwoo said. "If we can't shut down the gate remotely, maybe we can destroy it physically." "The control room is on the other side of the station," Ji-eun replied. "And it's between us and all the controlled crew members." As if sensing their plan, the entity pushed more of itself through the portal. With each passing second, more of the alien crew fell under its influence. Soon, the humans would be outnumbered and surrounded. The awakening was complete. The sleeper was free, and it was hungry for the taste of galactic civilization. The entity pushed more of itself through the portal, and with each passing moment, its psychic influence grew stronger. Half the alien crew was now walking toward the gate with empty eyes and jerky movements. The other half stood frozen in terror, their minds overwhelmed by the creature's mental assault. Minho made a quick decision. "We're leaving, now!" He grabbed Hyun-woo and Ji-yoon, pulling them toward the emergency exit. So-young was already moving, clutching her datapad with the translated fragments. Behind them, Commander Thexvar and the other alien officers continued their slow march toward the creature. "We can't just abandon them," Hyun-woo protested as they ran down the corridor. "We're not abandoning them," Minho replied, checking his weapon. "We're going to save them. But first we need to figure out how." They reached the station's communication center, but the equipment was dead. The entity's presence was interfering with all their technology. Even the backup systems were failing one by one. "It's jamming everything," Ji-yoon said, trying to restart the long-range transmitters. "We can't warn anyone about what's happening here." So-young was studying her datapad, scrolling through the ancient text fragments. "There has to be something here about how to fight these things. The civilization that built the gates managed to contain them for 3 million years. "Look for anything about humans," Hyun-woo said. "The entity can't control us the way it controls the others. That has to mean something." As So-young searched through the data, Minho watched the security monitors. The entity was now fully through the portal, its massive form filling the excavation pit. The controlled crew members were gathering around it, and he could see their faces changing. Their expressions were becoming identical: cold, empty, and hungry. "Found something," So-young said suddenly. "It's a fragment from what looks like a historical record. It mentions a species called the Stone Minds, beings whose thoughts were protected by what the ancients called walls of survival." "Stone minds?" Hyun-woo repeated. "That could be referring to humans. We did evolve on a dangerous world where mental adaptability was crucial for survival." Ji-yoon looked up from the communication equipment. "So our brains are naturally protected against psychic attack?" "More than that," So-young continued reading. "According to this, the Stone Minds were the only species that could operate the containment systems. The gates weren't just prisons. They were weapons that required a specific type of consciousness to activate." Before anyone could respond, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light. Through the walls, they could hear the sound of metal being torn apart as the entity began dismantling the station. "It knows we're here," Minho said, "and it knows we're different from the others." The controlled crew members began moving through the station, searching for the humans. Their footsteps echoed through the corridors as they spread out in a coordinated pattern. "We need to get to the gate control room," Hyun-woo said. "If there are containment protocols, that's where they'll be." "The control room is 3 levels down," Ji-yoon said, "and there are at least 20 controlled crew members between us and there." Minho checked his weapon again. "Then we fight our way through." "No," Hyun-woo said firmly. "These are our friends and colleagues. The entity is controlling them, but they're still alive in there. We find another way." So-young found more fragments on her datapad. "Listen to this. The Stone Minds didn't fight the sleepers directly. They used something called the Network Reversal Protocol. Instead of trying to destroy the entities, they turned the gate network back into a prison." "How?" Ji-yoon asked. "I don't know yet. The text is damaged, but it mentions something about a conscious mind needing to maintain the containment field. Someone had to stay connected to the network to keep the sleepers locked away." The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. The controlled crew members were getting closer, and soon they would be found. "Maintenance shaft," Minho pointed to, a panel in the wall. "We can use the service tunnels to reach the lower levels." They crawled through the narrow tunnels, moving as quietly as possible. Behind them, they could hear the controlled crew members searching the communications center. The entity was directing them with increasing intelligence, learning how the station was laid out. "It's adapting," Hyun-woo whispered as they crawled. "The longer it's in our reality, the more it understands about our technology and tactics." They reached the gate control room to find it empty. The massive computer systems that monitored the gate were still functioning, protected by heavy shielding that blocked the entity's interference. Ji-yoon immediately began working on the control systems. "I can see the network now. There are gates, opening all across the galaxy, hundreds of them. On the main screen, they watched in horror as reports came in from across Confederation space. Gates were activating on dozens of worlds, and similar entities were emerging from each one. Panic was spreading as entire populations fell under psychic control. The Confederation fleets are trying to respond, So Young reported. But their crews are being controlled as soon as they get close to the gates. Only the human ships seem to be maintaining their autonomy. Because humans can resist the psychic attacks, Minho realized. We're the only ones who can fight these things effectively. Hyan Wu was studying the gate network data when he made a disturbing discovery. It's not random. The entities are coordinating their attacks. They're targeting the most heavily populated worlds first, using the controlled populations to spread their influence faster. Ji-Yun found the containment protocols buried deep in the gate's programming. Here it is, the network reversal protocol. But So Young was right. It requires a conscious mind to maintain the containment field. Someone has to stay connected to the network permanently. Connected how? Minho asked. Direct neural interface, Ji-Yun replied grimly. The person would become part of the gate network itself. They'd have to give up their physical body to become the prison's warden. The implications were clear. Stopping. The sleepers would require the ultimate sacrifice from whoever activated the protocol. Before anyone could respond, the control room door exploded inward. The controlled crew members poured through the opening, led by Commander Thexvar. But his face was no longer his own. It bore the cold, hungry expression of the entity that controlled him. The stone minds, he said, in a voice that wasn't quite his own. We remember you now. Your ancestors were clever, trapping us for so long. But you are few and we are many. This galaxy will feed us well. Minho raised his weapon but hesitated. Even controlled, these were still people he had worked with for years. You cannot save them, the entity spoke through Thexvar. Their minds are ours now. Soon all minds will be ours, except yours. You will die slowly, so we can savor your resistance. The controlled crew members advanced, and Minho realized he was out of time for moral hesitation. If they were going to save the galaxy, they would have to fight through their friends first. Behind him, Ji-Un was frantically working on the containment protocols, while So Young and Hyun Woo searched for any additional information that might help them. The fate of every living being in the galaxy now rested on 4 humans trapped in a control room, facing an enemy that had already conquered civilizations more advanced than anything in known space. The real battle was about to begin. Minho fired his weapon, aiming for the legs of the controlled crew members. He couldn't bring himself to kill them, even if they were being used by the entity. The energy blasts knocked several of them down, but they got back up immediately, showing no pain or awareness of their injuries. The neural interface is almost ready, Ji-Un called out, her fingers flying over the control systems. But someone needs to make the connection manually. Once they do, there's no going back. Hyun Woo was studying the data feeds from across the galaxy. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Entire star systems were going dark as the sleepers consumed their populations. Human ships were fighting desperately, but they were vastly outnumbered. We're running out of time, he said. The entities are learning our tactics. Soon they'll figure out how to overwhelm even human resistance. So Young found more fragments in the ancient data. The original civilization tried to fight the sleepers for centuries before they developed the containment protocol. Billions died in the war. We don't have centuries. The controlled crew members pressed forward, ignoring Minho's warning shots. Commander Thexvar spoke again in the entity's voice. Your weapons cannot stop us forever, Stone Minds. We have infinite patience and unlimited servants. Behind the advancing crowd, they could see the entity itself flowing through the corridors, like living darkness. Its presence was so overwhelming that the station's structure began to warp and change, metal bending into impossible shapes. The interface is ready, Ji-Un announced, but I need someone to distract them while I make the connection. I'll do it, Minho said, reloading his weapon. You focus on stopping these things. No, Hyun Woo said firmly. I should be the one to make the connection. This is my responsibility as the senior scientist. Actually, So Young said quietly, it should be me. Everyone turned to look at the young data analyst. She had been the quiet one throughout the crisis, working in the background while others made the dramatic decisions. I've been studying the protocol while you were fighting, she explained. The neural interface isn't just about maintaining The containment field. The Guardian has to understand the entire network, monitor thousands of gates simultaneously, and predict the entity's attempts to break free. It requires someone who thinks in data patterns and system relationships. She was right, and they all knew it. So-Young's analytical mind was perfectly suited for the task that would save the galaxy and doom her to eternal isolation. "There has to be another way," Minho said, still firing at the advancing crew members. "We can't ask you to sacrifice yourself." "You're not asking," So-Young replied, moving toward the neural interface console. "I'm choosing. Someone has to do this, and I'm the best qualified." The entity seemed to sense what they were planning. The controlled crew members suddenly moved faster, their coordinated attack becoming more desperate. Through HFY, it spoke, with rage and fear for the first time. "You cannot imprison us again. We will not return to the darkness." "Yes, you will," So-Young said calmly as she prepared the neural interface headset. "Because that's where you belong." Jian worked frantically to prepare the connection while Hyunwoo helped coordinate the protocol activation. The system required simultaneous input from multiple stations, and they were running out of time. "On my mark," So-Young said, placing the neural interface device on her head. "When I connect, activate the reversal protocol immediately. Don't hesitate. The entities will try to stop the process once they realize what's happening." Minho's weapon finally ran out of power. The controlled crew members surged forward, their hands reaching for the humans. But So-Young was already making the connection. The moment the neural interface activated, everything changed. So-Young's eyes rolled back, showing only white, and her body went rigid. But her voice remained calm and controlled. "I can see the entire network," she said in a distant tone. "Thousands of gates, millions of controlled minds, and the entities spread across dozens of worlds. Beginning protocol activation now." Across the galaxy, the gate network began to reverse its function. Instead of allowing the sleepers to spread their influence, the gates became prisons once again. The entities found themselves being pulled back toward their original containment sites. Their psychic power turned against them. The controlled crew members in the station suddenly stopped moving. Their empty expressions flickered with confusion as the entity's hold over them began to weaken. "It's working," Hyunwoo said, watching the data feeds. "The entities are being contained again." But the process wasn't without cost. So-Young's body began to change, her skin taking on a crystalline appearance similar to the gate material. She was becoming part of the network itself, transformed into something between human and machine. "The containment is holding," she reported, her voice now echoing with harmonics that hadn't been there before. "But the entities are fighting back. They're trying to corrupt the network from within. I'll need to maintain constant vigilance to..." "Keep them imprisoned." Commander HFY blinked and looked around in confusion. His own personality was returning as the entity's control faded. "What happened? Where are we?" "It's over," Minho said, helping his alien colleague to his feet. "The crisis is over." But it wasn't really over. Across the galaxy, the human ships reported that the entities were being successfully contained, but the cost was becoming clear. So-Young had saved everyone, but she would spend eternity as the network's guardian, forever connected to the gates, forever watching for signs that the sleepers might break free again. "I can feel them," she said, her voice now coming through the station's communication system rather than from her transformed body. "They're angry, but they're contained. They'll try to escape again someday, but not for a very long time." In the weeks that followed, the truth about humanity's role in galactic history became clear. The ancient fragments revealed that humans weren't primitive newcomers to space. They were the descendants of the original network guardians, the survivors of the civilization that had first contained the sleepers millions of years ago. When the original containment had begun to fail, the Guardians had sent colony ships to distant worlds, carrying volunteers who would maintain the bloodline of the stone mines. Earth had been one of those refuge worlds, and humanity had spent millions of years developing the mental barriers that would one day be needed again. "We weren't discovering ancient technology," Hyunwoo realized as he studied the complete historical records. "We were coming home. The Galactic Confederation, humbled by their near destruction, formally recognized humanity's unique status. Humans would serve as the galaxy's guardians, monitoring the gate network and ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Minho was promoted to head of Galactic Security, leading teams of human monitors stationed at each gate site. Hyun-woo became the chief archaeologist for humanity's expanded role, working to recover more of their lost history. Ji-yeon designed new monitoring systems to help So-young maintain the containment field, and So-young herself became something more than human, but not quite machine. She existed within the network. Her consciousness spread across thousands of gates, eternal and vigilant. Sometimes she spoke to her old friends through the communication systems, sharing jokes and memories from their time together, but mostly she watched and waited, ready to respond if the sleepers ever stirred again. The galaxy was safe, but the price of safety was constant vigilance. Humanity had learned why they had once been feared and respected across the stars. They weren't just explorers or scientists or warriors. They were the guardians at the gate, keeping the darkness locked away so that others could live in the light.